state and trends. At first, bumblebees. Here you can see the results of the 5th Estonian evaluation of species vulnerability according to IUCN categories. And you can see the number of expected number of species under different categories because the evaluation results haven't been approved finally yet, but probably this will not change. And you can see that one bumblebee species is evaluated to be extinct in the region. It's Bombus laesus. It means the species haven't been seen more than 50 years, but actually before that also only single specimens have been seen. So there is one species evaluated to be vulnerable and 20 species, it is 71% from evaluated species, is of least concern. And actually for 2014 for Europe, it was evaluated at 63% of the species is least concern. So we have 71. And for Europe, it was that 23% of the species is belonging to different threatened categories. It is this red, orange, and yellow. But luckily, we have at the moment 4%. So we have bumblebees monitoring in the frame of National Environmental Monitoring Program. It stopped 2015, but started again this year with a changed methodology. We also have bumblebee monitoring to evaluate Estonian rural development plan measures related to environment. It started in 2006. We have 66 monitoring areas. And here you can see 4 figures, 3 for different bumblebee indicators, the number of bumblebees, the number of bumblebee species, and gender diversity index. And down right side is flower density, which is also evaluated on monitoring transects. And the main thing to see here is that during at least this, it's not so long period, but during this 11-year-long period, there is no negative trend. And actually, in case of the number of bumblebees, top left figure, you can see that the values are higher in latest years. And actually, I have to admit that there is one of the causes is also changes in one field worker. But even if I omit this data, the values still are higher also for the last years. So solitary bees, it was found that there is not enough data about solitary bees in Estonia to give the vulnerability evaluations. And so in 2018, a project was started, revision of Estonian bee fauna, financed by Environmental Investment Center. And thanks to that, we have now much more knowledge about Estonian bees. We know that we have at least 271 species of bees in Estonia, and this data also contribute of giving the vulnerability evaluations for the bee species. So butterflies, you can see that 3 species have been evaluated extinct in the region, and 10 species are evaluated to be belong to different threatened categories. Luckily, 87 species, it's 84% of the species are evaluated to be of least concern. And actually, there was a publication in 2019 which said that national red lists of butterflies in 24 EU countries show that on average 27% of butterfly species are considered under different threatened category classes. It's this red, orange, and yellow. So the average was 27. We have 10% at the moment. And great input for this evaluation was Estonian butterfly distribution mapping in 2016 to 17, and more than 1,200 places were checked during this mapping. We also have butterflies monitoring in the frame of National Environmental Monitoring Program. Here you can see butterflies index derived from this data, and you can see that it's rather stable or even slightly maybe increasing. So the situation is not bad based on this data. But of course, the monitoring sample always could be higher. And since this year, now 2020, actually the methodology was changed a little bit. And there will also be more monitoring areas. So from moths, hawkmoths are usually considered to be the best pollinators. So here you can see also the vulnerability evaluations for 11 hawkmoth species in Estonia, and all are of least concern. And the other 6 species not evaluated are rather rare and migratory species. We also have moths monitoring in the frame of National Environmental Monitoring Program. And I also asked if it's possible to find data about the hawkmoths in Estonia which contribute to pollination service, because all do not. And I got data about 4 species, and you can see the species indexes here. And the trend is for 2 species moderate increase and for 2 species uncertain, but certainly not any decreasing trend here. Hoverflies are usually said to be the best pollinators among flies. In Estonia, we have 221 species, as far as we know. And of course, there is too few data about biology and abundance. And it's not possible to give vulnerability evaluations to most of the species, and of course not to say something about the trends. And now about the measures, and I mainly talk about measures for pollinators in Estonian Rural Development Plan 2014 to 2020. And actually in Estonia, we have only one measure directly directed to pollinators. It's establishing foraging areas for bees. It started in 2015. It is 1 year long obligation. And actually it's related with honeybees. So the applicant must have at least 10 beehives or a contract with a beekeeper with 10 beehives. And the applicant must grow at least 3 melliferous plant species. Total list consists of 32 species. Foraging area should not start further than 200 meters from beehives. And there are management restrictions up to the 15th of August, and glyphosates are prohibited. And this measure is actually related with beehives and beekeepers because to make farmers and beekeepers to communicate with each other. But actually these foraging areas offer food resources also for wild bees. And here you can see some figures about the measure. Left upper figure shows that last year the area under support was about 300 hectares. And actually it was only 0.4% from arable land, so it's not very popular. We hope it will become more popular, and we will also continue with the measure also in the next CAP period. And 11 plant species were used last year from the list of 32 species. And here you can also see that most popular was white sweet clover, lacy phacelia, and also different clovers. So we have also some other measures there which may have indirect positive impact on pollinators. One of these is environmentally friendly management. It's prudent shallow scheme, which is applied on quite a big land area and has quite many requirements which are maybe not so strict. So I brought out some requirements which may indirectly have a positive impact on pollinators. It is that 15% from arable land should be leguminous crops. In certain cases, 2 to 5 meter wide grassland field margins should be left or created. There are limitations on the use of glyphosates, and there are compulsory trainings, and one part there is also pollinators. We also have organic farming support, and of course in that case no synthetic pesticides are used, which is good for pollinators. And in addition, in crop rotation, 20% should be leguminous crops. and they also have compulsory trainings. And for both these measures, the obligation is 5 years long. And here you can see also a figure just to show how popular these measures are or are not. So this SAPS is Single Area Payment Scheme support, and you can see that last year it was almost 970,000 hectares. It's the basic support which almost all farmers apply. And you can see that almost half of it is covered with environmentally friendly management support and almost 200,000 with organic farming support. So two more measures which could indirectly have positive effect on pollinators. The first one is environmentally friendly horticulture. It is known that horticultural land actually could be quite good places for pollinators. And we try to make this more environmentally friendly. For example, the glyphosates are prohibited. Pheromone traps should be used to reduce the use of pesticides. Different biodiversity elements should be placed in the garden, for example, insect nests and beehives. There should be protective hedge on each side of the field. And in addition, we have support for the maintenance of semi-natural habitats. And many of the types of the semi-natural habitats provide good food for pollinators. And of course, these cannot be plowed up, and no pesticides are used. So again, good places for pollinators. And both again have 5 year long obligation. And on last slide, I talked about organic farming support and environmentally friendly management support. And we also have bumblebee monitoring for that. We have 66 areas, from which 1/3 is organic farms, 1/3 environmentally friendly management farms, and 1/3 is control group farms with single area payment scheme, but these are not applying for this environment supports. And the main thing, just to look here quickly on the figures, is to see that this green line, which is control group farms not joined with environmental measures, are in each figure lower than the other two lines. So in control groups, the bumblebee indicators are really lower. And one slide also about other activities for pollinators. Of course, education is very important. There could always be more, but for example, in Estonia, I know that in 8th grade, there is a short introduction about bees and pollination. Raising awareness is very important, different brochures, information days, popular science articles, and so on. And of course, there could again always be more. Citizen science is important to raise also the awareness and make people interested. We have Facebook groups for Estonian bumblebees and solitary bees and butterflies and moths of Estonia. And also citizen science platforms where people can also enter data about pollinators. And there are 1 minute, yeah. There are also measures to reduce the use of pesticides. And of course, there can be other smaller scale activities, which I'm not aware of, but I know that some children are placing also insect nests in the gardens and to learn and so on. And very good news is also that in 2022 to 2024, pollinators action plan will be worked out for Estonia. It's in the frame of LIFE IP project, forest and farmland. So that's a good news. And thank you.